Welcome to the Believe It William podcast with guest John Graham, three-time USA memory champion on panic attacks and anxiety. Hi everyone, I am Lori Ann. I am the host of Believe It William, and today I have John Graham with us. He is a three-time USA memory champion, and also he guides people to completely transcend panic and internal anxiety without conventional methods. I find that really fascinating. Thank you so much for being here today with us.
I'm really happy to be here, and let's dive in. Let's get to the real raw truth of it all.
Yes. So, as I always ask, what brought you here?
Yeah, what brought me to this point in my life was transcending an internal battle of resistance and high pressure. I'm a three-time US champion. On the surface, I look like I've reached the top of the pillar. I even this year I performed on a Chinese TV show, the most popular show in the world. 400 million people watched me perform, right? So on the surface, it looks amazing and incredible, and it is. But internally, I battled the demons, the anxieties, and tried all of the methods, right? And the reason I'm here talking is because I've released it, I've integrated those parts of me and fully transcended that, without using all the mainstream methods that are out there, which are limited, right? And there's a reason people are kind of maintaining and coping with these things. So to be very honest, Lorianne, I'm at the point where now I'm on the mountaintop shouting. Like, I'm shouting from the rooftops and mountaintops, like, what works and what helped me. Because if you can imagine, like, someone who completely transcends cancer and they have the cure, like they want to just shout the truth. And that's where I'm at. I'm like, I fully understand what's going on to know the real root cause and how to help people transcend it. And it's not easy, but it's the truth of it. And that's where I'm at now. That's why I'm here, just spreading the word of helping as many people as I can who are really willing and ready to go that route.
That's beautiful. I have a quick question as we're going to be going on with this. So I found out much later on in life that my father struggled through anxiety and panic attacks. I knew my mother did, but I didn't know my father didn't. I mean, he was a very, an executive and business, talked in front of a lot of people. I always thought, wow, he's got it all together. And then when he told me that, I went, wow. Then I was talking to my sons, and they were saying that they have anxiety. Like, so they started to say, Mom, it's because of you. And I'm thinking it's because of my parents. Is it genetically? Can it be genetically passed down? And I mean, I'm sure that's not a scientific question, or maybe it is. I don't know.
It's absolutely passed down.
It is.
Not
Okay.
genetically, but mostly through conditioning.
Okay.
Right? It's the way that we're brought up, the words that we hear, the same behaviors that we see, and we learn them to how to handle the world, right? So at a very young age, between the age of newborn and 7 years old, we're the most highly impacted. Like, our brains are sponges. We're in a theta state. So everything is downloaded in to understand the world, to build a structure. So everything your parents said to you, how they said it, the feeling you got from those things, your teachers, everything gets absorbed in you. And that's how you face the world, right? So not only are we talking about the mind, everyone's obsessed with the mind, right? But the heart has memory too. And that's what people forget or don't understand is we face the world and interact with the world by hiding certain parts of us or doing things in a certain way that were conditioned. They're unconscious behaviors, but they absolutely are passed down generationally. And that's why we also have the power to break those patterns too. It doesn't have to be that way.
I love that. So tell us a little bit about your journey. I'm really curious about how you ended up at the top of that mountain, because I'm sure a lot of us would like to be there with you.
Well, I'm still going up, like, that's the thing. It's just, that's the journey, you're always ascending and expanding if you face that way. So 2014, this was 10 years ago, I read a book on memory techniques. It was called, the book was called Moonwalking with Einstein. So I was 27 years old. I'm not born with an eidetic memory or a photographic memory. I'm not a genius or a savant or anything like that. It's a complete myth, by the way, most of that stuff. I read a book. Yeah. So people assume I'm naturally gifted, right? And that's part of the myth of it all. That's why people stay stuck, because they think, oh, it's just genetic, it's just whatever, God-given abilities. But no, it's not the truth. As I learned these ways of really how to use the right side of the brain, the heart, harmonize the mind to memorize massive amounts of information. Right. So I started I started like learning how to memorize decks of cards, completely impractical information. That was the first thing I learned, is learning how to turn the cards or whatever information you're using into a mental image or a visualization or a feeling, and then how to connect that to something you already know, like a place or a person or information it's already in your brain. You're creating a web so that you know where the information is stored. And memory athletes is what we call ourselves. We use these techniques to just memorize like decks of cards within 20 seconds, or like hundreds of digits or words or names and faces. And so I learned that, just all technique. And I started competing all over the world. My first competition was in China in 2014, the World Memory Championship, which like I went big, right? I'm like traveling through Asia with my then girlfriend, who's now my wife, and I just decided to sign up. This is a 3-day competition. This is 10 events over 3 days. This is people all over the world sitting in a room memorizing 10 different disciplines. And the very first event, talk about high pressure, my heart started pounding out of my chest and my mind went crazy. Like all the negative thoughts, all the demons, all the like, you can't do this, get up, like give up, you're nobody, like that stuff started circulating. And I almost got up, like 3 different events of that whole competition gave up. That's how intense it was.
Wow.
Right. And I completely bombed, by the way. I met some of the best people in the world and learned from them. And that's what 4 years later, I became US champion in 2018. And I've won the last 2 years. Right. It's got me on TV shows. The Super Brain Show, which I mentioned has 400 million people. I had to go
Wow.
on. Yeah. What I did there was I memorized, I went head to head against one of the best in the world in China. He's a Guinness World Record holder. We had 100 different random items, like props from the show, like a glass of water and a painting, a Rubik's Cube. They put each item into a different locker number. So there's 100 lockers in front of me, 1 to 100. So I had to know what item went in what locker after it was shut. But then each locker was shut, and then they entered a 4-digit code to lock that locker. So I had to memorize all 4-digit codes for all 100 lockers. So not only am I in front of 400 million people, I've got to memorize that, right? Which is an insane amount of pressure. So that's the memory journey. But in between all that, I struggled with anxiety. I struggled with dread. I struggled with overwhelm, procrastination, panic attacks. On the way, like this pressure that comes up, like if you're an entrepreneur or someone who is going through life trying to expand and ascend or just get better, this stuff rises to the surface. And if our conditioning that I mentioned earlier creates resistance, right? We have trouble, we have anxieties, we have panic attacks, we have all these issues. So I had to learn how to overcome all that in the middle.
That's amazing. So yeah, so that's absolutely incredible, like that the mind can do that, that you can actually learn that. I mean, I'm constantly in my profession, I need to try and remember people's names and faces. I'm really good with faces, but to keep the names and the faces together, I still have an issue with that. So this sounds like phenomenal that you can actually do that. Like that's out of this world, really. But
Yeah.
you said it can be learned.
It's all just like learning what the mind wants to remember. We remember feelings, we remember places, we remember people, imagery, stories. So stories, let's talk about that. You basically are creating a mini story to remember something, right? So if I'm trying to remember Lori Ann, right? There's 2 ways I can do this. And this is really important distinction. So I can go left-brained here and try to think of an association for Lori Ann, right? This is what I don't want you to do, by the way. Lori Ann. So you start doing like a Google search in your mind, like all the Lori Anns. Well, I don't know any Lori Anns. What's the best association I can think of for Lori Ann? And you start thinking and thinking, and oh, well, there's Hugh Laurie from what's the show? There's a famous medical show, right? There, he's an actor.
Yes.
I know
Yeah,
a Laurie House.
House,
And
yeah.
I can think and think and think left brain and try to come up with the perfect association, or I can use my right brain. And this is what I've trained people how to access is you're not searching you're allowing something to come in. This is where all our creative ideas come in. It's not coming in through your mind. There's a divine download that happens, that comes in. If you allow that in and you listen, something will come in, and I call this the ink blot. Like first thing that comes to your mind, trust it, right? So Lori makes me think of my best friend, one of my best friends in school. His mom was Lori. She was a receptionist. And Anne, right? I think of an ant, right? Ant. It's just a common image I use. So I imagine like you're a receptionist, you're Lori, you're my friend David's mom, and like there's ants on your table or ants on your glasses, right? I just make that connection. But I notice you can waste time Google searching your brain, or you can allow the first weirdest whatever comes in. Don't censor it, don't judge it, right? Notice how weird it was, right? You're a receptionist with ants on your glasses, like it's completely ridiculous, but that makes it memorable. You're connecting things you already know or that were given to you so that I can remember them.
That's almost like, that's actually almost weird because although I'm not a receptionist, I sit at reception because we don't have a receptionist. I like people to come in and see somebody. So I chose to sit there. And last week we had a car that came in and I do the deliveries and open up the door and there were a bunch of ants.
No, see,
So that's weird though,
synchronicity.
right? Because I said reception, so I could have had ants because the car was right. I just find that prophetic almost. But anyway,
Yeah, there's your synchronicity for sure, right there.
right. So I was telling you just to run this into, my listeners, I'm sure some of them might be able to relate to this. I was telling you prior to the show that when I was bulimic and I struggled with it for 30 years, I would get like severe anxiety and panic attacks, and even driving was really bad because I would end up having some spells where I had to pull over to the side of the road. I'd start to hyperventilate. Since I quit, I have not had one of those episodes at all. Not that I haven't struggled with anxiety, I still do that, but it's reduced itself a lot. Would part of, I mean, we're talking about passed down, but would part of anxiety and panic attacks also be related to your nutrition?
I would say not so much.
Not so much, okay.
And here's the thing, I tried all the mainstream methods to solve this, right? Because initially it manifested as, excuse me, like brain fog or freezing up mentally, like deer in the headlights, like in fear. And then I got to the point where I was having panic attacks. My arm would tighten up, feel like I was having a heart attack. My left side of my face went numb once, thought I was having a stroke, right? They really are visceral. They're very real. They're adrenaline surges that like cause all these physiological issues. So initially I tried the supplements, right? Thinking I'm deficient in something, thinking something's there, eating better, right? And these are all good things to do, right? But then you try to treat it with the mind. You try the guided meditations. You try the therapy, the reframing of the thoughts, the negative thoughts, right? The switching to gratitude and journaling and all these mental activities and exercises, but they all fall short. The reason these mental and physical nutritional methods fall short, not that they're bad things and they don't help in some way, but anxiety, and I'm not talking about like I'm nervous for a test anxiety. I'm talking about like the feeling, the hyperventilation, right? The internal dread, overwhelm, and panic. They're emotional root issues. And so we're trying to treat them with better diets and supplements and meditation and all of these things, but it's an emotional root issue. It's emotional pain that's coming to the surface. And I'll be very direct too about this. We all do this to some extent. Everything in your life that you ever pushed away, every uncomfortable moment that you couldn't handle is still inside of you. And that stacking of suppressed emotions causes a lot of the physiological symptoms that we try to treat physically or mentally. Because, when you feel these symptoms, your mind goes crazy and start thinking worst case scenario, your conditioning kicks in. Well, that's true, but we try to treat the conditioning. We try to go through the mind. It's deeper than that. It's internal. And so all of these suppressed emotions, if that's the root cause of all of this, I was like, at one point I realized that I said, I need to go in and access that and release this stuff. Because when you release, when you fully experience and feel this stuff that's arising the way it was meant to be experienced, it releases. And when it releases for good. So that was the route I started taking, not trying the mental stuff, but going really deep within, releasing this stuff for good so that I could transmute that energy and integrate.
I love that. Um, so I was just thinking, I just have to say this, my sisters and I, we were talking about it, and we would be at work, and whenever we're called to the office, to our manager's office or whatever, you get all nervous and you're afraid that they're gonna get mad at you. And for a lot of times that seems to be the way, like in corporations, where when they do call you in, it's only for that, just, tell you you're not doing something right. Since I am now working at a place that's so delightful, they call you in to thank you for what you're doing well. And I found that that really transformed my thoughts. Now, when I'm being called to the office, I'm not getting all, stomach knots and everything. But you're exactly right, that it was associated to that pattern of, being called to this at school in your first, if you're being called to the principal's office, it's because most likely you did something wrong and you have to deal with that. So I find that fascinating that yes, if you dwell, go deep enough, you can definitely associate some of these today feelings to something from the past that you have not let go of, right? So,
it's all emotional. And talking about that real quick is the moments in the past where, like, even everyone think of their parents for a second, because a lot of it comes from parents, and not like to blame them or anything, but everyone can imagine their mom or their dad or both see that look on their face that still bothers you, that
yes,
you did something wrong, that disappointed look. We all have something like that. That look, that look caused over time, after many times of seeing that, experience in that, we had emotional pain that went with that. We felt embarrassed. We felt, oh, they're disappointed in me. I did something wrong. That's the mind understanding of it. But internally, we felt an uncomfortable energy in our stomach or in our heart. That's the emotional pain that we suppressed. So when you go and you're called in at work and you're, 37 years old, and like your boss scolds you, that it pokes that emotional pain from the past that comes up, right? We think the boss is causing our anxiety. No, 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 no. Your anxiety is from all of the stuff you shoved down from the past that is now provoked and arising. So the boss simply poked it, right? And now it's arising. And what do we do when we have anxiety? We try to push it away. It's uncomfortable. It's highly uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable. So we try to distract ourselves from ourselves, right? I need to go on a walk. I need to listen to this meditation. I need to smoke. I need to drink. I need to watch something. I need to meditate. All of that is a cope. All of that is bypassing the stuff that's coming up to be faced and seen, right? So when we do that, we shove it back down. We keep it. We're literally holding on to this stuff. We don't realize that. I didn't realize that either. I was doing the same things, trying to feel better. When you have anxiety is actually one of the worst things you can do, because you're not feeling that stuff that's coming up to be seen and experienced. And that's controversial, right? Because everyone's like, even therapists and everyone, counselors want you to feel better. People want you to feel better. But really, the best thing you can do is sit, hold space for that energy and feel it fully, like sink into that feeling without your mind, without trying to figure out what's wrong or where this is coming from, but sink into that feeling and experience it. Because the only way you're going to release it is to fully experience it.
wow. Do you, so when you're helping people, I mean, for some people, they would say, there's no way I can do that. There's no way I can just sit in that.
Yeah.
Do you guide people? Obviously you do. You guide people to learn how to do that.
Yeah. The only person on this planet who can do this work is you.
Yeah.
If you're listening, there's like, I could sit there, or someone who loves you can sit there and be with you, but you're the only one who can fully feel and experience it. Now, to the point, this is, you can understand what I'm really trying to say here is you got to go through it to release it. And some people aren't ready, and that's okay. This is not for everyone. Some people are okay with the medications and the therapies and the stuff that copes and kind of keeps you at a certain level, but it's always there, right?
Yeah.
But if you're haunted by this stuff, if you're not sleeping at night, or every time you go into your boss or whatever, you're poked by the stuff, you're holding on to it, right? So
Yeah.
the only way out is through. That's what it's meant. So I guide people. There's really three things that I guide people through because I keep this ultra simple. Is number one, you got to realize if you have anxiety or panic or depression, or just feel like you're under high pressure, high stress. That's high stress just means that you've got a suppressed emotion that's coming up. That's all it is. If you have any of that, number one, your nervous system is dysregulated. You're very tense. And the tension, the physical tension holds that suppressed energy in. That's why the moment we get reactive or frustrated, we tense up because we're literally holding that in because it's so uncomfortable. We're reacting to it. So the first thing I teach people and show people how to do is how to live with a fully regulated nervous system, meaning not just in a 30-minute meditation are you relaxed, you're relaxed 24/7. And that takes some getting used to. Because if you can relax your being and your nervous system, not only do you function better physically, but you release this stuff. It comes to the surface and it releases some of it without you even knowing because you're so relaxed. So that's the first thing. Number two is, how do we unhook from negative emotions? I call this the unhooking method. The moment you feel anxiety or frustration or sadness, doesn't matter, a negative, contractive emotion, a feeling in your body, how do you release that? Because most people wait till the end of the day to decompress, right? Or they have to, they do it, oh, I do my therapy session later, I'll take care of it later. No, you need to learn how to constantly release this pressure as it's happening. And so I teach people how to stay relaxed and release that, what to do out of the mind, because most people try to figure out, what do I need to do to feel better? Where is this coming from, right? Mentally. And that's completely like you're missing the point. So that's the second thing. The third thing is we all have these boulders inside of us, Lorianne. We all have these moments of the past, these big events from childhood, from heartbreaks, from betrayals, from bosses, right? That really scarred us, that we're holding on to. How do we release those, right? How do we release those without mentally searching in the past, which strengthens those neural pathways? That's why therapy can actually, strengthen these neural pathways that keep us in anxiety. It's because we're constantly digging and looking and ruminating on what we're worrying about. Well, how do you access that feeling, fully feel it and release it without digging, without doing all this, hypnosis work of going into the past? And so I teach those three things because once you release the boulders, once you learn how to stay relaxed and release, you're going to release all this nastiness that's inside that's causing these anxieties and these panic attacks.
That is amazing. Really seriously amazing. Like I said, I'm fascinated by this, and I think that's the first time I've heard of anything that really, because it is a lot of the stuff that comes out today is mindset and meditation and so on. But you're right about the heart. I mean, I guess too, if you ever think about it, when you are heartbroken, you get this choking in your sensation in your throat, and your heart does hurt. So it does hold on to that. So I know that everybody would be different, but I would think that this is obviously not something that happens overnight. I mean, you're going to have to take some time. If somebody was going through this and they got 2 3 months and they just weren't feeling that they were getting anywhere, what would you say to them?
Though the people who get to 3 months and aren't experiencing anything aren't really following the guidance that well. And that doesn't happen too much. So typically what happens is the hardest part is trying to release your control of your mind, because the mind wants to figure everything out. The mind wants to do it correctly. The mind wants to get involved in everything. And that's really why people struggle with like even meditation or things, is because their mind gets in the way. They try to coerce and do things, do versus be. And it's a completely different flip. So most people who are in anxiety are left-brained. They're trying to do, always think, always like be active, right? So it's a complete flip where now you have to be more in your feminine energy. And that doesn't mean your girly energy by any means. It's more of the feminine essence of just being, right? And for men, especially, it's very hard.
Mhm.
You know, women too, we're raised in a masculine society, left
Yep.
brain, do, structure, logic, right? Step by step, and
Yep.
blocking out that balance. So to answer your question, right? We have to be devoted to this. We have to be devoted to being and relaxing and learning how to let go of that mind. So to anyone who's three months in and not seeing results, it's because they're addicted to doing and not really integrating these practices. But to answer typically what happens is the most common question I get from people early on is, how do I know this is working? Because really you don't know. It's like the analogy of going to the gym. If you're just going to the gym for the first time today, you go work out, you bust your butt, you come home and you look in the mirror. Do you notice anything? No, you notice a red face, sweat, tired, exhausted. When do you start noticing that it's working? Well, you have to go consistently for weeks. You know, maybe by the third week, maybe by the fourth week, you look in the mirror and notice a tone, you feel something different, you feel it internally. That moment, Lorianne, is the moment that flips people. So the same thing with this work is, if you keep doing this, you will notice, you will have that moment where, oh my gosh, I'm feeling lighter. Oh my gosh, I can breathe out of my chest again. Oh my gosh, I'm not hyperventilating. I'm not having skipped heartbeats, right? You feel it in your being. And that's the moment everything flips, right? So you have to be devoted to it, knowing that it does work, knowing that you have stuff that needs to be released, and everyone is different.
I love that analogy about the gym. Seriously, it's true, right? It doesn't happen overnight. Nothing really does, but I mean, that particular case, as far as visualizing it, that's, I like that. I just love all this information, John, seriously. Now, I just want, if you could please share with my listeners, where can they find you? Because I think that that's going to be really important for them.
Yeah. There's a free video guide, a 12-minute video on how to release anxiety for good. You can go to releasepanic.com/free. That really gets you on my list too, so you can keep updated with more information on this, but it gives you access to this complete flip of this is an emotional root issue. And the funny thing is too, Lorianne, is I attract people who actually don't have panic attacks because they hear what I'm saying. They hear that the truth is all of this suppressed emotion is your suppressed potential. So while everyone's trying the mindset, the flips, the gratitude journals and stuff, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's limited. And so your real potential is in all of this suppressed energy that you've held in your whole life, all the things and the parts of you that you pushed away. So if you can learn how to release them and integrate them, you're going to notice your natural expansion and your potential. So even if you don't have visceral anxiety like I did, or panic attacks, right? You can still learn these methods, and I highly recommend them to everyone who's trying to ascend. People who are under pressure, people who are stuck in, feeling overwhelmed. No, even people who are like good in every other area of their life, but there's one thing in the way, right? That's the expansion is within. So people who are looking for that next level. So again, it's releasepanic.com/free. And I'm also on Instagram at Memory John G, John with an H. So you can find more information there, just more posts related to this here.
That is wonderful. Really, there's so many things that it's applicable to. And, I think it's just like when you're saying to release and what's going on, holding down again for my listeners. I know that with us, it was, obviously there's a lot of, we talk about it, we eat our emotions and then we throw them up. It's almost like a ritual thing, but it doesn't do anything because really that's still there, right? It doesn't fully release anything at all. So I think that this would be wonderful for my listeners who are struggling with bulimia to reach out to you, because I think that it would be an amazing first step for them to do that. And like I said, I went to therapists, I went to group sessions, I tried everything, I was put on Prozac and all that stuff. None of it worked. It came down to a release of the heart at one point. I still probably have a lot I can work on, but you know, it was, I had to let go. I was divorced and I held on for a long time, and it was when I thought, you're free, you're free. It's
Oh,
done, it's over. And it was huge. So
felt
that's, I
really
can
good.
relate to that now, but I never even thought of it that way. And you put it really clearly into words, what probably I experienced at that moment. So,
Yeah, it's so true. And here's the thing, for people who are going through bulimia and, you know, any eating habits, all of this, whether any type of addiction, food issues, work, like being overproductive and busy and achieving, that was my cope, right? Pornography, video games, alcohol, any of that is an emotional root issue. So if
yeah,
we can go into that suppressed root issue instead of trying to force a new habit or force ourselves to see things a different way, if we can go within and release these really tense blockages, this energy that we're holding in, we can release that and we can see clearer. We naturally make better decisions because we released and integrating these parts of us that we've suppressed for so long. Because the real reason we're avoiding doing things the right way is because of emotional pain.
yes,
That's why we eat certain ways or we try to look certain ways, because we're afraid of feeling bad. We're afraid of these things that will poke us, the bosses or the people in the world, the criticisms, because it provokes emotional pain. But the reason it provokes emotional pain isn't because of that person or society. It's because we are holding on to that emotional pain that feels uncomfortable. But if you can release that attachment and those pains, things don't bother you as much anymore, or don't bother you at all. So you can become more integrated and whole.
love it. Thank you so, so very much. Really, really appreciate you being here. This was fantastic information. And but like its listeners, I know will get a lot out of it. Again, thank you so much for your time, for being here, John.
Lorianne, thank you for leading this discussion. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit me at bleepbulimia.com.